So here's just a very basic introduction to root position part writing. So we're gonna look at it in 4-part textures and 3-part textures, and I'm gonna read you off some rules that you need to follow in there. Just some very basic rules. We'll go more in depth in another video and on other topics on this awesome topic of part writing. So if we're writing in 4-part texture, we need to remember that all members of the triad are always present. So that means that you have all 3 notes in the triad in the chord. And the note that's usually doubled is the root. But it can be the 3rd, but never double the 5th. The leading tone, if you're in a 5 chord or you're in a 7th chord, the leading tone is never doubled because it has too much strong tendency tones that make it difficult and kind of harsh to the ear to hear. I think that's it for 4-part textures, so we're going to practice for a minute on that. So I wrote out this just little simple progression. So we have a 5 chord, a 5/7 chord, and then a 1 chord. So for writing a root position, that means that the bass note is always going to have the root of the chord. So a 5 chord in the key of F is C. So we're going to fill in our bass first. So we have C, a 5/7, which is also the same as a 5, except with an added 7th. We're also going to add a C, and then the 1 chord is an F. So now what I like to do is I like to fill in the soprano line. So in a 5 chord, we have a C, an E, and a G. And I'm going to double the root because it's a little bit stronger. But feel free to put any of those notes down. But do remember that you do need to double the root in a triad. So I like to put the root in the melody line. So I'm going to put the C here. In a 5/7 chord, we already have the root. So I'm actually going to put the leading tone, which is, or I'm going to put the 7th tone. Sorry, not the leading tone. The 7th tone here. And then I'm going to, for the 1 chord, we have an F, an A, and a C. And to keep that sort of parallel motion or contrary motion that I've been doing to the bass, I'm going to have an A. All right, so here's each of those notes. We have 1, 3, 5, 7. We have 1, 3, 5. So we've used already the 1 twice. We don't need to double it. In this one, we've used the 1 and the 7. And in this chord, we've used the 1 and the 3. So we need to double the root here and add a 5th. We need the 3rd and the 5th in this chord, and then we need the 3rd and the 5th in this chord. So in the 5 chord, we need the 3rd or the 5th. So I'm going to make the alto be the E, and the tenor be the G. In a 5/7 chord, I'm going to keep that with the E and G. So now we've used up every one, and then for the 1 chord, we need a 5, so we need a C, which I'm going to stick conveniently in the alto. And then we also need another root, or what we could do is instead of doing that, we could put the F here, and then we could have this move up to the 3rd, or the F, A, C, or the 5th, and we could have that be a C. So that's how you get all of your parts written. In 3-part textures, we have the 5th, which is usually omitted, just because it doesn't really help to find the chord. It just is kind of part of the triad. If you have just a root and a 5th of the triad, it sounds really hollow, and you need that 3rd to define what sort of characteristics it is, if it's a major chord or a minor chord. Also, in an incomplete triad, we'll usually have the root doubled. 7s are never doubled, just like in our 4-part harmony. So we're going to write that same melody, but we're only going to use 3 parts. So we have a 5, a 5/7, and a 1 chord. So for the 5 chord, we have a C, an E, and a G. For the 5/7, we have 4 different notes. And because of this, we're going to omit the 5th, because we would omit the 5th in a triad. And if we have a 7th chord in a 3-part harmony, we need each of those defining characteristics. So we need the root of the chord, we need the 3rd of the chord, and we also need the 7th of the chord, because that's what makes the 7th chord. And then finally, we have the 1 chord, which has 3 notes. So right off the bat, we're going to eliminate the 5th, just to make it easier. You can write with the 5th, it just makes it a little bit more complicated to do voice leading. So because we're writing in root position again, we're going to have the same bass line that we did in the other example. So we have C, C, F. So we already have the root, and the root. So now we're going to put the third in, and we can also double the root again. So we're going to double the root. We're going to write the soprano first. We're going to double the root. We need the third and the seventh of a 5/7 chord, so I'm going to also do what I did in that one, which is the B, which is the seventh of the chord. And then I'm going to stick, I'm going to actually double the root here, which is a little bit different than our example there. All right, so now we need the third of the chord for the alto part. You can also write it in the tenor part, but I just chose to do the alto part. So the third of 5 chord is C, E. So we're going to stick this. The third is also an E. And finally, we need another third, so we have an F, A, C. This is actually incorrect. We don't want the C to be there. We want a third, so we could have this also be the A. That's why that was confusing before, sorry. So we're gonna have the same soprano line. So we need a third, and we already have the third, so now we can double the root, which will be an F.